Hello, welcome to the Monitoring, Evaluation, Research and Learning course. My name is Mike Mwale and I'll be your facilitator, your trainer for this session. Monitoring, Evaluation, Research and Learning is an essential approach for ensuring success and sustainability of the development programs, especially in the field of public health, education, agriculture and climate change. So this course is designed to provide a comprehensive understanding of MERL, equip learners with the knowledge and tools needed to design, implement, and evaluate program effectively, as well as conduct impactful research and foster organizational learning. We have 6 modules, and the first module is focusing on the introduction to MERL. So by the end of this module, participants will be able to define monitoring and evaluation, identify the key differences, and understand the critical importance of M&E in driving success of programs. So what are some of the key MERL definitions? Number one is monitoring, which is an ongoing routine collection and analysis of data about the program's activities, outputs, and progress. So it's used to track whether the program is on track to achieve its goals. So monitoring helps program managers to understand the extent to which activities are being implemented as planned, on time, and within the budget. So monitoring is a continuous activity, right? So you start with your data collection, you analyze your data, you assess the progress, you identify the adjustments that need to be made, and then you implement those adjustments. So you always do a continuous process when you're doing monitoring, when you're monitoring your projects. Monitoring helps you and me to track our activities in order to answer the following questions. What activities are we doing or have we done? Where, with whom, when, and how many? What are some of the importance of monitoring and of monitoring? So the first one is make informed decision about program implementation. The other one, identify and address challenges early on. So if you're implementing a project and you discover some of these gaps, with monitoring, you'll be able to identify these gaps early and make adjustments as soon as possible. Another thing, it helps to demonstrate progress to stakeholders. You'll be able to share the number of people that you've reached, the number of people that you've reached with your program. The other thing also, it contributes to learning and improvement. When you identify those gaps, it's a learning process that will also help you to build as you'll be developing other projects. Some of the common data sources of monitoring include surveys and questionnaires, administrative and program data, observation methods, informant interviews, focus group discussions. We move to the second concept, which is evaluation, which is a systematic investigation of whether an intervention or a campaign is effective. So it helps us to understand whether the implemented activities have achieved the desired effect. So evaluation can be carried out periodically, either midway throughout the project or at the end of the project, right? So you can do a midway evaluation, you can do an end evaluation, you can do, before you even implement your project, you can do a baseline evaluation so that you know where you stand, so that it helps you to tell a story at the end of that project. So evaluation offers a comprehensive overview of the project's overall outcome and overall impact. Evaluation helps to answer the following question: are we doing what we said we'll do? Are we doing the right things? What difference are we making? How can we use evaluation, or what are some of the importance or the benefits of conducting an evaluation? So number one is help us to understand our implementation. The second reason is it helps us to identify unintended consequences, right? You're implementing a project and there are some of these things that we never expect, but as a result of our program they happened, right? So with evaluation you'll be able to understand some of these unintended outcomes, the unintended results. The other thing also is assessing the intended effects. So these are things that we expected to see, and with evaluation we'll be able to see whether these things that we said would do will change. Have they changed? The other thing is attributing changes. When you do an evaluation, you can be able to tell whether the change that has happened in that community is as a result of your intervention. So you can do an attribution analysis. Evaluation would help you to do that. The other thing also is evaluating the cost effectiveness. Cost analysis is very important. in project management. With evaluation, this will help you to do a cost analysis. You do an effective comparison. You have two projects under a similar budget. You see which one is doing well with the similar budget, so that you'll be able to make comparison and pick the best or the cost-effective approach to those two programs that you're implementing. What are some of the differences between monitoring and evaluation? When it comes to purpose, monitoring aims to track progress towards program goals and objectives, as well as identify areas for improvement, while evaluation aims to assess the effectiveness of a program and inform future decision making. With regards to the scope, monitoring focuses on program activities and outputs, while evaluation focuses on the program outcomes and impact. Data sources with monitoring relies on existing reports or records, right? So you can use existing, records, reports when you want to do monitoring. While with evaluation, you would want to collect additional data from that target population. Participants, who does monitoring? So monitoring can be done by people directly involved in the project. While evaluation, it may require consultation from program staffs, or you may want to hire consultants to do that kind of evaluation. Timing, the monitoring is continuous. Right now you implement your project, you start monitoring there and then. While evaluation, is systematic and it has specific times when you can do that evaluation. Now, what is learning in M&E, which is another concept that you need to understand? So learning is a process by which we gain understanding or knowledge based on observation, experiences, or teaching. So learning is a core concept of MERL because it helps us to become better in our advocacy and to implement activities that yield worthwhile results. However, it's not enough to just simply, implement activities and be stuck on the results. We must learn from both the good and bad outcomes, and even from the things that happen unexpectedly, right? So you implement your activities, you learn from your outcomes, you improve your strategies, and you influence behavior, and the end result is good delivery of service. So why do we emphasize the L in the L for learning? So because so that we learn from success and challenges and also adapt activities if necessary. If we are successful in something, let's tell others about it. Why? To demonstrate that our skills and methods are useful. We also need to share our challenges and what we've done to address them. Why? Because if we don't do that, others may struggle with the same challenges. So that's the reason why we need to embrace the learning in our projects. So what are some of the strategies that organizations can adopt in terms of prioritizing learning? So organizations should provide what we call continuous learning opportunities. They should link individual and organizational performance. They should use learning to reach goals. They should foster inquiry and dialogue session within the organization. They should also embrace creative tension. People have different opinions. They should allow people to express themselves, share different opinions and views. The other thing also is continuous environmental awareness. Raise awareness about the importance of learning in the meetings, staff meetings, annual review. Raise that so that people can be able to think and also try to share their ideas with the team. We have the research aspect, which is a new thing in M&E, but it has been there, but now we're trying to put more emphasis on research. What is research in M&E? So this refers to a systematic collection, analysis, and interpretation of data to assess effectiveness, efficiency, and impact of the program, projects, or intervention. So it involves using scientific methods to gather evidence that inform decision making, improves implementation, and demonstrate results. So now, when you look at the research cycle, is you collect your data, you analyze, you implement, interpret your results, you make informed decision, you improve your implementation, demonstrate results. So it's also similar to monitoring, but there's some differences, and we'll share them later on. Another concept is what we call an indicator, which is a quantifiable measure that provides insights into the performance of a program or initiative. right? So by tracking these metrics, organizations can evaluate their effectiveness, identify areas for improvement, right? So just an example of an indicator, if you are in the energy sector, you look at the number of households adopting renewable energy sources. It could be solar, wind. The other example of an indicator could be the number of people trained in climate change and health. So where do people use indicators? In economic development, we have indicators. We have the GDP. In environmental sustainability, we have indicators there. Different kind of indicators. In the public health space, indicators are applied. In the education space, we have indicators: the dropout rate, the enrollment rate. So these are some of the indicators that, or areas where indicators can be applied. We have a target. What is a target? A program target is a quantifiable goal or objective that a program plans to achieve by a certain date. So once a program is underway, targets serve as a guidepost for monitoring whether progress is being made on schedule and at the levels originally envisioned. What is an objective? Which is another concept that you'd want to understand in the MERL space. So an objective is a precise action or a measurable step that an individual or group takes to move closer to the goal. It's a specific operationalized statement detailing the desired accomplishment of an intervention, right? So an objective is specific in terms of characteristics. It's measurable, it's actionable. In terms of definition, it's very precise, and it always outlines the measurable steps. Purpose, you can have individual goals, you can have group goals or group objectives or individual objectives. Importance, it brings project clarity and project direction. When you have objectives, you're going to have direction, you're going to have clarity in your implementation. You're not just going to implement activities. You always have to ask yourself, what change is this activity going to bring to my objective? Another concept that you'd want to know in the monitoring space, in the monitoring and evaluation space, is the goal. What is a goal? It's a general statement that describes the hoped for result of a campaign or an advocacy or intervention in long term. So the program goal specifies what will be accomplished over the entire project period and should directly relate to the program statement and vision. So the goal is achieved through project objectives and activities. We have what we call activities. We know we're doing this activity, we're doing this activity. You hear some of these things when you're participating in some of these meetings. We're conducting this activity, but what is that? So activities are specific actions undertaken to achieve the program's objectives. So they answer the fundamental question: is what are we going to do? Right? So we have an objective, which is raising awareness. So what activity can you do to raise awareness? You're going to conduct campaigns. The other objective is providing direct service. What are you going to do? What activity are you going to do for you to provide that direct service? You're going to do screening. You're going to do treatment. The other objective is training and mentorship. What are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? You're going to implement activities such as knowledge development, skills development. So that is an activity. We move to the next concept: outputs. So what are outputs? Right? These are very common in the result chain. I think we'll be able to run you through that. Outputs. Outputs are the direct products of service generated by the program's activities. So they provide a tangible measure of progress and answer the question: is what are the immediate result of this activity? So outputs, they quantify the program's reach, typically measured in numbers of figures. That's if you're doing a quantitative aspect. An example of an activity is training 30 healthcare workers on hand hygiene guidelines. Then the output would be 30 healthcare workers trained on hand hygiene guidelines. That's that. Then you have the outcomes. Outcomes are the immediate intended results of the program or project. They are typically measured at the end of a specific intervention and represent the direct effects of the activities. So an example of outcome in climate change and health may include reduced mortality rates from climate-related diseases. You have increased access to clean and safe, facilities. We'll also have improved health literature. So these are just some of the examples of climate change and health, which include the reduced mortality rates from climate-related health diseases. also improved health literacy regarding climate change and health, increased access to clean water and sanitation facilities. Now, we look at the example of outputs and outcomes. So you need to be very careful not to mess up the two. An outcome, you're looking at the immediate result of that activity. While with outcome, you're looking at the short and medium intermediate result of that activity, right? So you have the program activities and you have the outputs. So the outputs, you're looking at the sessions conducted, clean water being provided, that's an example of an output. Vaccines administered, that's an output. Now, when it comes to outcomes, remember you did a training session, right? So now, with an outcome, you're going to talk about increased knowledge. The people that you trained in that training session, have they increased the knowledge? So that's where now outcomes comes in now to assess whether they have increased their knowledge. Then the other thing is clean water provided, which is an output. Then what will be your outcome in this case, or your long term, your short or medium, or your medium or long term change? What will be that? So the change will be reduced waterborne diseases because there's clean water as a result of that activity. There's clean water. You're going to have reduced waterborne disease. Then the other output, which we talked about, vaccine administered. Your outcome now will look at, have we decreased the vaccine preventable diseases? So that's how these are interlinked. But they are different from each other. Outputs and outcome are different from each other, but this is how they are interlinked. Then the last one is impact, which is the long-term product consequence of a program or project. It goes beyond the intermediate outcome and measures the overall change. So it looks at the long-term change. So examples could be improve the overall health and well-being of this vulnerable population. It can happen 5 years even after the project has been, your project was implemented and it's now over. 5 years down the line, that's when maybe you may see some of the impacts. 2 years down the line, that's when you may see impact of your work. So it's a long-term thing. It's not something that can happen within a month, within a quarter. It's a long term. Now, what is the difference between outcomes and outputs? So on my left, we have outputs. On my right, we have the outcomes. Now, outcomes, let's start with the outputs. Outputs, they focus on tangible product and services, while outcomes, they look at the broader changes and benefits of that intervention. Outputs are short term, while outcomes, they focus on medium to long term. Outputs, you're looking at the intermediate deliverables. Outcome is a long term change. Those are some of just the basic differences of the two. Just a summary of the result chain, just the 4-5 concepts that we just defined. We have the inputs, which is the financial, human inputs. These could be the financial, human, and resources that are going to be used to engage in those activities. So it could be the personal, it could be the budget, personnel or budget. Then activities, you're looking at actions taken to produce goods and services. It could be a workshop, a conference, a webinar, focus group discussions. Then we have the outputs. So you're looking at products and services produced resulting from activities. So here you're looking at the number of workshops, conferences, webinars. You're looking at the results of those activities. Then outcome. Here you're going to, it's a use of the outputs by the targeted population. Are the people attending these workshops? And if they're attending these workshops, have we seen an increased, stakeholder engagement? Have we seen an increase in the knowledge, right? Then that is the outcome. With the impact, you're looking at the changes in the living situations. You're advocating for a certain policy. You've done trainings, you've done webinars, you've done published articles. And now what is that thing that has changed? You want to see changes in policies. So that is what we talk about when you look at these result chain. What is some of the importance of MERL? When you look at this picture here, it's telling us that there are two gentlemen, two people that are on a boat, right? And the boat there is the project, right? So they're having a discussion, and one person is like, why should I review monitoring data? Why bother? We're just doing fine. Our project is doing fine. Our indicators are great. We are, doing well. Why should we bother about, reviewing the monitoring data? you know. And when you look at that, the boat is moving and they're heading towards the end, towards the biggest setback, So remember that M&E information is useful only if it is being used, right? So when you have that data, you need to review it, you need to understand it, because if you don't, you may end up like these guys, and we all know what's going to happen next. Now, obviously, they'll drown. So let's review our data. The first importance of monitoring and evaluation, research and learning is evidence based decision making. You have the data, you're going to make evidence based decision, right? The other thing is accountability. You have your results. You can demonstrate your work to stakeholders, the community, the donor, and the beneficiary. They will see your work because you have the evidence, right? So it provides that accountability. Continuous improvement is another importance. It helps us to identify our strengths, our weaknesses, thereby allowing us to refine our programs and strategies. Knowledge generation, you're going to understand more of what works and what doesn't work when you implement or when you have an M&E system in your project. Adaptive management, you know that you're implementing a project and things are not doing fine, and you realize that this is not doing fine. You may want to adapt, right? You may have to make some changes. So you'll be able to make those changes in real time because you have M&E system in place. Impact assessment, you're going to measure the long-term effects and sustainability of your intervention. That's another importance that is not being talked about much. Learning culture, it's going to create, when you have an M&E system in place, it's going to create um, an environment of reflection, innovation, and knowledge sharing within the organization. Resource optimization, you have an M&E system in place, it's going to help you identify the cost-effective approaches and efficient use of resources. Stakeholder engagement, with your M&E system in place, you're going to provide a framework on how you're going to involve beneficiaries and partners in the assessment processes. Policy influence. Obviously, when you generate evidence, it can inform policy making and sector-wide improvement. The other thing that we want to look at is M&E in program cycle. So these are some of the key stages or activities involved in program planning, monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. So you're going to have the initial assessment, planning, and then implementation. So that's just the major program cycle that I can share with you. So with the initial assessment, this is like the first phase of the project life cycle. That is which determines the need for a project and informs its planning efforts. So under the initial assessment, what you're going to focus mainly is needs assessment. So you want to identify gaps within the target population, examine the causes of these gaps, and prioritize the strategies as well as addressing them, right? So, for example, if a community lacks access to fresh fruits and vegetables, a needs assessment might review the gap as a barrier to health eating habits. So that is how you may want to integrate M&E by conducting some needs assessments so that you understand some of the gaps. Yeah. And when is a needs assessment actually conducted? So at the beginning, at the start of a new project, when there is uncertainty about the most pressing needs, to convince funders of the project's relevance, to engage the community in defining the intervention components. So when baseline knowledge is lacking, but a full baseline assessment isn't feasible, you need needs assessment. The planning phase, which is also another program component cycle. Planning. So following the initial assessment, the next step or the next phase is project planning, which is directly informed by the needs assessment findings. So this phase typically involves developing a logical model and an M&E plan, as well as conducting a baseline study, and with a logic model which visually just represents the relationship between the project's resources, activity outputs, and expected results. Illustrating the assumptions behind how projects intends to improve. Then the third cycle or part of the program cycle is the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. So encompasses ongoing monitoring of various types of evaluation. What are some of the challenges of monitoring and evaluation? M&E requires predicting change we want to see. So M&E requires predicting the change we want to see. Something possible something impossible to do perfectly, especially in the turbulent global environment. So if we do not measure, remember, if we do not measure the results, we cannot tell success from failure. If we cannot see success, you cannot reward it. If you cannot reward success, you're probably rewarding failure. You get it? So if you cannot see success, you cannot learn from it. If you cannot recognize failure, you cannot correct it. So the inability to measure results leads to unrecognized success. You're doing well, but you can't tell whether you're doing well, which is a very, very bad thing. Some of the challenges that are faced in the in M&E space is inability to measure results. You are running a project, but you are unable to measure the results of that project. That's a very, very, very big challenge, right? The other thing is lack of clear metrics. You do not have clear metrics for your projects, not clearly defined metrics, not specific, not smart. Poor data quality. Your data is not of good quality. There are a lot of missing data. Those are some of the challenges, or you do not have access, you do not have control over that data. Lack of performance indicator. You're running a project, but you do not have indicators in your project. Inadequate reporting system. There's no systems to report even to stakeholders, even within the organization. So these are some of the challenges that we face. Inability to recognize success. You're doing well, but you cannot recognize that win, which is something that is bad, which is something that is a challenge as well. Inability to reward success. You cannot reward your wins as an organization or as a project. Misaligned incentives. You're doing, the other thing is lack of recognition program. Lack of knowledge sharing. You're doing a project, but you don't have a system in place to share some of these knowledge products. Insufficient feedback mechanism is another challenge. Inability to learn from success. You are winning, but you can't learn. So these tend to hinder the success of monitoring. Thank you.